This is the D6 generation.
Dice are our vice.
Creating not too horrible content since 2008.
Are you crazy? That's like 400 hours of gamer nonsense.
Oh, I think we're well past that.
D6G Hot Take.
Hey, it's been a while, and I thought I should probably reach out. And this is not going to be a hot take either. It's been a take that's been brewing for just about 2 months now. Right? All of June, all of July. Yeah, about 2 months. So if you have followed me on any of my social media, and by that I mean Twitter, because I still can't figure out Facebook, you know that most of my hobbying, once I finished the Confederate forces that took me forever, has been Star Wars Shatterpoint by Atomic Mass Games. That's what I've been listening to podcasts about. That's what I've been painting. That's what I've been learning. That's what I've been playing when I get a chance. And I wanted to share with you a little bit about Star Wars Shatterpoint, why it's been fascinating to me, and it's been a while. So I thought, yeah, I'm going to reach out. So what is Star Wars Shatterpoint if you have no idea at all? It is a tabletop skirmish war game. In the Star Wars era, obviously, and it sort of focuses on the Clone Wars time period in Star Wars between Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, and Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. So it's actually that cartoon, the Clone Wars cartoon, and the artwork for it, not really the models, although the models to a lesser degree, but the artwork for the game very much takes all of its inspiration from the Clone Wars era cartoon. So it's a skirmish game, meaning, it has a small physical footprint on a 3x3 table, low model count, usually between 6 to 8 models per side. And usually once you get the rules down, a relatively short playing time. So you're probably going to be done in an hour and a half to 2, as opposed to hours and hours. Where does the name come from? Well, it's a concept in Star Wars that certain moments in time have an oversized impact on the galaxy. Like, they're very important. There's a moment in time where if one thing happens, it's going to have a huge impact. And apparently, there's a Jedi power with the same name that allows some Jedi to sense the approach of these Shatterpoints and to use them for maximum effect. The most famous Jedi of this time period that has a Mace Windu had the power, and it's showcased in a novel of the same name, which is ironically sort of where this name came from. So I'm not going to do a whole game review. Okay, that's beyond the scope of a Pip, although I'm afraid this is going to take up as much time as if I did. I don't want to do that by myself anyway. There are some great new podcasts, as I mentioned, that address the game and go into it in detail, and I would point you towards them if you're interested. The two that I've kind of landed on for the most are the Hello There podcast and the Rogue Support podcast, although there are several others. Many of them started and then didn't make any more episodes, so these are the guys that have continued working. There's a couple others that have continued working, but for a variety of reasons, these are the guys that I kind of lean on the most. Okay, and it's pretty amazing, actually, that these guys were all set up getting ready to go before the game even launched in June. Both of these podcasts have a very nice mix of lore and the Star Wars background, also rules of the game, and also tactics. So check them out if you're so inclined. I'm hoping to get Russ and Rafe to play a game and do a full D6G review with me. I came really close this week and then came down with a horrible summer cold that laid me out for the whole week. But hope springs eternal, as they say. So, what am I going to do now? What are we going to talk about? Well, Shatterpoint is full of great gaming innovations that make it one of the most interesting and intriguing and different games that I've played in a long time. So I want to share with you these innovations and kind of reflect on how they impact this game, or any game really, and why they make Star Wars a great cinematic Star Wars gaming experience, why they make Shatterpoint this kind of gaming experience. And just to put it out there, I am a full-blown convert, in case you hadn't noticed. I am a complete fan of this game. I am not giving you an unbiased opinion, although there are some things that are a little weird and wacky, and I might point them out from time to time. So first, I'd like to talk just a little bit about force building, although it's probably not going to be a little bit. You're going to be playing with somewhere between 6 and 8 models, like I said. You're going to have 2 main characters, 2 secondary characters, and then between 2 and 4 supporting characters, depending on the teams that you're choosing. There's no agreed upon point limits in Shatterpoint. Everything is supposed to be balanced out based on the main characters. Okay, so each main character or primary unit has assigned to it a squad point total. So if you get a really powerful main character, their squad point total is going to be lower to offset how powerful they are, right? And so once you make your teams, everybody's going to have the same number of teams, and that's what's going to balance everything out, okay? So you're going to choose a secondary character and then a support unit or a support character that'll accompany that primary character, and that's where the points are all going to be spent, on the secondary and support units or characters. There is a little confusion on my part, I will admit, as far as words like model and unit and character and how the game uses them. You figure it out quickly enough in a practical format, but it is written in a way to keep future options open for the game and for future squad construction possibilities. But don't think you're going to be able to listen to me here and then jump in as a vet to play this game, because I'm giving you the basic concepts. There's a lot of fine-tuned minutia legalese that I'm not really getting into. Okay, I'm giving you a very broad overview. So you're going to choose 2 primary characters for your strike team, as they call it. And then each of those primary characters are going to give you a point value. You're going to choose a secondary character to go with each of those primary characters, and then a unit, a support unit that will go with them also. Okay, and they're going to add to the squad point value. To make things easy, Atomic Mass Games packages them in squad packs. So you get the whole squad, everything you need. You get the main character, the secondary character, and the support unit. And they're all themed thematically. They're all themed, tied together thematically. Okay, so you don't have to field the models as they're packaged. But synergies are extremely important in the game, and until you master all the different keywords and how all the abilities and the keywords interact, then you're better off fielding the squad packs as they come, because they're going to support you with a nice set of synergistic models. Okay, so for as an example, in the starter box, you have 1 pre-built squad. Ahsoka Tano Jedi No More. So it's Ahsoka Tano as a grown-up, young adult, as your primary character, and she's paired with Bo-Katan Kryze, the leader of the Mandalorian Resistance, as your secondary character, and a unit of 2 Clan Kryze Mandalorians who go with you, and they have abilities that kind of trigger off each other, and so the 4 of them make a really good, solid unit. On the other side of the aisle, you might choose Lord, not to be confused with Darth Maul, as your primary character, who is paired in the starter set with the Mandalorian usurper Gar Saxon and his 2 supporting units who are super commandos, Mandalorian super commandos. So again, all those models kind of go together both in theme and in synergies. And as long as your squad doesn't have more than 1 character with the same name, Like you can't have an Ahsoka Tano Jedi No More be on the same team as Padawan Ahsoka Tano. Or characters from different eras, like you can't have Luke Skywalker and Anakin Skywalker on the same squad, for instance. You're good to go. So astute listeners might ask themselves, hey, I thought I was going to be getting between 6 and 8 models. You're talking about 4. And that's because each squad, which they call a strike team, each strike team is made up of 2 squads. So you're going to build 2 of these squads, and that's where your strike team is going to come from. And the difference in numbers come with some of the support units, which are usually 2 models, are actually only 1. In fact, so far we do have 1 squad pack where the support unit is only 1 model. The Imperial Inquisition squad comes with the Grand Inquisitor as a primary character, Third Sister Reva as a secondary character, and then it comes with both Fourth Sister and Third Brother as support units, but you can only choose one of them. So in that squad, you would only have 3 instead of 4. So there's 2 things there too, though. One, if you pair this box with another primary unit and a secondary unit, tying your remaining support Inquisitor with that secondary main unit, you'd have a strike team of only 6, right? And 2, this marks the game's expansion out of that Clone Wars era I talked about earlier and introduces us to characters from the Obi-Wan Kenobi Disney Plus series, which takes place, obviously, after Revenge of the Sith. So it's a new era, which is very cool. And it did that with their first dual pack, which are these special packs that Atomic Mass Games puts out. They announced it on May the 4th, of course. It's called the You Cannot Run pack. And it includes a beautifully detailed diorama of Obi-Wan Kenobi confronting Darth Vader at the climax of that Disney Plus series. Darth Vader is a primary character in the game. Obi-Wan Kenobi, in this particular diminished desert hermit capacity, is a secondary character. And the diorama incorporates actually several pieces of terrain, such as a land speeder and a smelter, that look really good in the game. So that's how you build your strike teams. Basically, the DNA reminds me mainly of War Machine Mark II, where they went from lots of point, like you were playing like 400-point games or 500-point games. All of a sudden, you were playing 15-point games or 20-point games, and the Warcaster that you chose gave you a point increase instead of a point cost. So the weaker the Warcaster, the more points they added, which was kind of a convoluted way of doing it. This is a lot more elegant. Your entire force is tied to the squad point allocation of your primary characters. So theoretically, every strike team should be balanced against every other strike team, right? And so next, I want to talk about how the game's structured. So each game of Shatterpoint is divided into 3 parts. The game calls them struggles. I've heard several people on podcasts and blogs and other places call them acts, like first act, second act, and third act. I do wish Atomic Mass Games had done that because it feels a little more elegant and easier to grasp than calling them struggles, but struggles it is. So basically, you're going to have 3 opportunities to win part of the game. So the overall victor is going to be the player who won 2 out of the 3 struggles. It makes it kind of feel like you're playing a best out of 3 mini tournament each time you play the game, except that instead of 3 actual games, the only things that reset between each struggle will be the scoreboard and the objectives that you're trying to take. So everything else stays the same. Everything else is perpetual. Okay. Nothing. It doesn't like reset everything. Your objectives are going to be dictated by the mission that you're playing, but there's currently only 1 mission available. And although there are vague comments here or there on social media every now and then, there haven't been any specifics on future missions, so I'll be talking about the 1 mission that we have now. Okay. Each game starts with 9 objective tokens distributed evenly over the 3x4 foot playing area, sort of like a tic-tac-toe board. So in my head, you've got center stage, upstage left, upstage right, up center, etc., but like a tic-tac-toe board. Okay, and the game thrives on lots and lots of terrain. The box comes with a lot of terrain. There's more terrain available. There's more terrain coming. And the terrain really, really kicks it up a notch with varying levels. It wants there to be lots of different levels. So each objective token is going to be placed on the highest possible level in its location. So, for instance, there's going to be an objective in the very center of the board. If you've put a 3-story tower in the center of the board, it's going to be 3 stories up. Okay. Then when that's all set up, you flip your first struggle card. So each struggle 1, struggle 2, struggle 3, they each have a small deck of cards. And you flip over one of those for struggle 1, and it's going to tell you which of those 9 objectives are going to be active for the first struggle. Okay, the design that it shows is going to be equally distributing the active objectives so that neither player has an advantage, but you couldn't really tell where you wanted to be focused when you were deploying. I don't think. Don't quote me on that part. Okay, so that's going to be how you how you play the game. The next innovation, though, is the struggle tracker. So that's going to track each of these struggles. How do you win a struggle? It is a beautiful cardboard token holder that comes with the starter set. It has a space in the middle with a 0 in it, and then counts out to 8 on either side. Okay? And there's a scoring cube that you put in the middle. And then each time a player scores a victory point, 1 or more victory points, you move that cube towards your number 8, so the end of your side of the tracker. Okay? So at the end of my activation, any activation after the first, if I have scored, if I have more unwounded models within range 1, which is about 1.5 inches, it uses the same range and movement tools as Marvel Crisis Protocol, I should say. So I get a point for every token. If I end a movement within range 1 of an objective, that objective is then mine. And that is perpetual till the end of that struggle or until somebody takes it away from me. So I can move away from that and I keep scoring it unless somebody takes it away from me. Okay? So let's say I have 3 of the 5. Then I'm going to be moving that cube 3 spaces towards my point. So basically, we're going to play tug of war, and each of us is going to be pulling that scoring cube back and forth over the 0 position towards the far 8 location on our side. Except that there's an added element. You're going to be adding momentum cubes to the tracker as well, shortening your runway to victory. So, for instance, each time I complete my activation and score, or not, but the scoring cube is still on your side of the board, I add a momentum token to mine. So it's sort of a balancing issue. Also, every time you wound the other player's a character from the other player, you get to add a momentum token also. So you're going to be filling it up, and all you have to do is get your victory cube to cross the line into where your momentum cubes are. That's how you win that struggle tracker. Okay, so as soon as a player does that, that struggle ends. They've won. The scoring cube is returned to 0. All the momentum cubes are removed, and the card for struggle 2 is flipped over, indicating what objectives are now active. Now, this time it's going to show you, instead of 1 map, it's going to show you 2 maps. And quite often, one of the 2 maps is going to give a slight advantage to one player or the other, and the player who lost the last struggle gets to choose which one they're going to do. Okay, so they're going to get a slight advantage in the next struggle, and that goes again into struggle 3. Okay, another difference in 2 and 3, different from 1, is that each active objective is indicated by a die facing on the defense die, which is a 6-sided die that has 2 of each possible outcomes. And so at the beginning of each activation, you're going to roll a die, and that's going to tell you which of those active objectives is the primary objective, which will be worth 2 victory points instead of 1, which will be what the other 2 are worth. Okay? Now, a quick word about activation. So you don't get to choose what characters you're going to activate each turn. So each time it's your turn to go, your character or your unit, it has a card. Each character or unit has a card. And you add all of these in plus 1 Shatterpoint card, and that makes your activation deck. You shuffle it up at the beginning of the game, and every time it's your activation, you flip it over, and that's going to tell you what you're going to be activating. Okay? Now, you can spend 1 force point. That's going to be the resource management element of the game, which, of course, these are guys who have been working on War Machine most of their professional lives, so there's going to be a resource management element of the game. You can spend 1 to flip the next card and put the first card in reserve. Okay, but you have to use the next card. And then each time it's your turn after that, you can either choose to use the card that's in reserve or pick up the next card and you have to use that. All right? So you have some mitigation of when you get to activate. And then the Shatterpoint card, of course, is a wild card where you can activate anybody. Okay, so each run through your little deck of 6 to 8 cards, you're going to get to act. Actually, it won't be 6 to 8, will it? It'll be 7 to 9 because you get that wild card in there, the Shatterpoint card. You'll be able to activate one of your characters or units twice. As far as what those actual activations look like, it's pretty standard across most games. You get 2 actions per activation from a menu of options, moving and attacking and activating special abilities and whatnot. And you can't take the same action twice. However, there are ways of doing the same thing twice. For instance, you might have a super... an ability that allows you to advance, which would not be the same as just advancing. So there are people who can move. There are characters who can move faster. There are characters who can do more. There's even a few characters, well, at least 1 or 2 out there right now, who can attack twice, although it's very expensive. Okay. Those special abilities and powers, often coming with a force cost, they usually don't count as one of your actions, so you might get to do more than 2 things. Some characters might. And you're playing with a whole bunch of terrain on so many levels. Of course, you're going to want a lot of different jump packs and force jumping and General Grievous clambering about and whatnot, and climbing. Anybody can climb. There's also a very interesting mechanic with ladders that'll allow you to get a free movement up or down a level to make it so the characters who don't have these other advantages can keep up. But for the last thing that I want to cover, I'm going to talk about that combat, those combat actions. How do you fight in Shatterpoint, and why is it, in my opinion, probably the most innovative aspect of the game? The basics, again, are pretty standard, especially if you're familiar with Atomic Mass Games library, like Marvel Crisis Protocol. The attacker is going to have a certain number of attack dice, and they're going to roll them looking for successes. Because it's AMG, Atomic Mass Games, the dice are going to have various results. They're going to be hits, critical hits, misses, and there's always something special, right? And in Star Wars Shatterpoint, that something special is called expertise. And you're going to find expertise symbols on both the attack and the defense dice. So the defender, as you would imagine, is going to roll a certain number of defense dice based on their own stats, and they're looking for successes. These results are going to be blocks, misses, and, of course, the something special, the expertise roll or symbol. The player, the attacking player is they lose a hit for every block the defending player got until you're left with a certain number of unblocked hits. And critical hits can't be blocked. Okay? However, there will be certain interplay with the expertise results, which we'll get to in a second. Or how about right now? So the innovation in combat in Star Wars Shatterpoint is all contained on what they call the stance cards. So each character has a stat card that's got their very, very simple stats. Everybody moves using the advance or the I can't even remember what it's called, but it's like a shorter advance movement tool. Okay. Their ranges of their weapons and their attacks and everything, those are all on the stance card. So it's their combat stance card. These are all single-sided cards, except for your primary characters. Your main characters are going to have two sides, and they can switch them. And that's pretty neat. They're going to dictate how many attack and defense dice you roll for both ranged and melee combat. And that's not that innovative, I know, although even that is sort of cool. So your stance for those major characters, you can be more of a defensive stance at the beginning of the game, and then switch your stance to more offensive. You can switch your stance once per activation without paying any penalty or anything. You can't do it any other way, although there may be some characters who are allowed. I'm not sure. The true innovations are contained in the other two parts of the cards, the expertise chart, which I was just mentioning, and the combat tree. So the expertise chart gives you a certain number of bonuses to your attack or your defense based on how many expertise results that you got. So more powerful characters have, as you would expect, maybe a more spectacular expertise chart. So you're going to add cooler things. Maybe you're going to add more hits, more critical hits. Maybe you're going to be able to activate more powerful bonuses like directly inflicting damage without having to do any of the rest of the math, or downgrading your opponent's die from a critical hit to a hit or from a hit to a miss, or even activating one of your force powers for free. And another thing that I'll talk about in a minute, this is where quite often you can inflict some conditions on the opponent. So, of course, the more basic the unit or the character, the less exciting their expertise chart is going to be. So right there, you've got built into the card that the character has a way that the same dice are going to give different results for different characters. Okay, the combat tree takes this specialization and it kicks it up to 11. Gamers who have ever encountered Arena Rex, initially it was by a company called something Red Republic, I think. It's sort of a fantasy tinged Roman gladiator combat game that we all played. I actually built a huge arena that I still have around here somewhere. We really enjoyed it. It was a very simple, quick skirmish game. You usually had 3 to 5 models per side, and you'd clash in an arena. That is basically where these combat trees came from. Okay, so basically, with these combat trees, you're looking at a series of boxes lined up horizontally across the card, linked together by lines, and then along that path are occasional branches that will give you different options, also linked by lines. So it looks kind of like a hopscotch setup, if you're familiar with that child's playground game, right? And so in the boxes, each box has got results from the combat, damage inflicted, conditions inflicted, movement options that it's going to give you, and things like that. For each unblocked hit the attacker scored, they move down one square down that path. And you can't go backwards, and you can't repeat squares, and you can't jump from one path to another without following the link line. You can opt to stop anywhere along the path, even if you have more successes if you want. So, for instance, if you're going to kill the person and for some reason you want to kill them, you could stop. Or if you're going to inflict something that you don't want to inflict or trigger something you don't want to trigger, you can stop. Okay? But you have to move forward until you decide to stop. And once you've decided to stop, that's it. You're not going to be moving around. Okay? And so you can't skip any along the way. So basically, you can find yourself, once you've figured out how many hits you've scored, with all kinds of options. You can damage your opponent. You can disarm them. You can shove them. You might even be able to jump up or down a level, move your model, move their model. There are all sorts of options available to the various characters of the Star Wars galaxy, and this is where a lot of the cinematography comes in, the cinematic action. This is where a lot of the universe building, the feeling of being in the galaxy of Star Wars comes in. It is very difficult to actually kill a model in Star Wars Shatterpoint. Okay, you can do it, but it takes a lot of time and effort and resources. Each character on their character card has two basic stats that you're going to be focusing on the most. Okay, and they're going to have a stamina stat, or how many damage tokens the character can sustain before they count as wounded, which is a term of art in the game. And once you're wounded, you can't contest an objective and you can't receive any further damage, although you can be attacked so that they can inflict conditions on you, move you, things like that. Okay, and all force abilities used by that character are going to cost 1 additional force point for the rest of the game. The next time that character would be activated by their card flipping over, they immediately transition from being wounded to being injured, which is another term of art. So there are a few places in the game where the terms of art get a little confusing and maybe a little what seems like unnecessarily convoluted. Okay, so when you're injured, you count as normal throughout the game. Everything is normal, like back to normal. You remove all of your damage counters. However, you do have that injured counter, and from now on, all of your force abilities cost 1 more than they did at the beginning of the game. Okay, and then the second stat that is involved in the death of the model is durability, and that's how many times you can be injured before you are removed. And once a character or a unit has injured tokens that equal their durability, they activate that one last time that it flipped from the last one flipped from wounded to injured, and then they get removed from play. Most characters in the game, except for most of the primary characters, have a durability of 2. So you can get injured once, and you only have that 1 penalty with increasing your force cost. Then you could get injured a second time, so you're going to get that activation, but then you're going to be removed. Okay? Most primary characters have a durability of 3. So because it is so difficult to remove characters from the game becomes far more about movement and maneuvering and pushing and pulling. So you're fighting them in combat or shooting them to either wound them if possible so they can't count to take an objective when you need it most, or to shove them off the objective. Some characters, for instance, Jango Fett has his capture wire, which allows him to pull models off of objectives and things like that, and catwalks and things like that. Okay? And so you're more attempting to move them off the objectives while you move onto the objectives and things like that, rather than try to kill them outright. And wreaking havoc with all of these things that you can and cannot do are the conditions that you can stack on characters through combat and other special abilities. First, there's strained, and if a model is given the strained condition, it means the next time that character does almost anything, it's going to take 3 points of damage and then remove the strained token. So it's a one and done deal. The next one is pinned. If a character is given a pinned condition, it means the next time they could move, they can't move and then you can remove the condition. So you have to take an opportunity to move without moving, basically, whether it's your activation or it's an ability that gets triggered somehow, things like that. The craziest, most cinematic two conditions, however, are disarmed and exposed, and they play right with the expertise charts to add yet another depth and another level of detail and cinematography to the game. So if you're disarmed, it means the next time that character would attack, they cannot use their expertise chart. If they're exposed, it means the next time they are attacked, they can't use their expertise chart in defense, right? So if you get like Anakin Skywalker, who's amazing usually in melee, and he gets disarmed, well, you're suddenly going to feel how important having a lightsaber is when you don't have one. Or if you're playing with Captain Rex, the clone trooper captain, and he gets exposed, well, all of a sudden you're going to feel how important and how durable clone combat armor is when you don't get the full benefit of it because of its expertise chart. Now, that is a little swingy because it does require you to be rolling expertise icons to feel the benefit or the lack thereof, but it still usually results in a feeling of vulnerability or danger because you don't have that cool thing to fall back on. And so between the stance cards with their expertise token or expertise charts and their combat trees, the whole game spins onto another level and another galaxy, a galaxy far, far away. See what I did there? So that is a quick overview of the basic elements of Star Wars Shatterpoint that I think make it such an amazing game. Really captured my imagination, really just captures the feel of Star Wars on the tabletop. I love Star Wars Legion. We've covered it a whole bunch. We've played it a whole bunch over the years. At the beginning, I did say I didn't want to get into it because it doesn't really reflect the fighting and the combat from the Star Wars movies and shows that I enjoy the most, and it's a great game, and I still love it, and I hope to play it a lot more for the rest of my life. But Star Wars Shatterpoint is the game I was thinking of without even thinking of it when I was saying that Legion wasn't really the game I wanted to get into. I just have to say the quality of everything is amazing. The models are big. They are roughly the same scale as Marvel Crisis Protocol, if you're familiar with those. If not, think in terms of maybe a 40 millimeter eye line height. They're big. They come with cool scenic bases. There's a little variety there, not as much as you might want, but still, it's cool. It's cool. And you're only going to be fielding, like I said, between 6 and 8 models, so it kind of blends in. The terrain that you can get for the game is amazing, not even considering all of the third parties that are coming in and making terrain specifically for it. Imperial Terrain, I'm looking at you. They actually got a set of the starter box terrain and then started designing 3D files and prints that they also sell, specifically measured to the heights of the terrain in the game. And the terrain in the game is designed very specifically because basically you can sort of ignore terrain that's less than 3 inches high because that's range 2, I think, and it's going to be range 2. It's all in the book, but So your terrain's got to be a little bit higher than 3 inches, and it's all designed that way. There's all kinds of walkways that fit on the ridges of all the different towers and pieces and buildings, so that you can change up the layout every time you play very, very easily. The details of the models are beautiful. They're very clean. The poses are. They're a really, really interesting, cool, enjoyable mix of dynamic and dramatic. So some of them are standing in very dramatic poses. Some of them are in very, dynamic running, jumping, or fighting poses. Hasn't been a single model I have so far. I've bought and painted every model that's been released so far. I'm afraid I might not continue that trend. I'm not sure that Queen Amidala and her handmaids is really a unit that I'm going to need. On the other hand, I know for a fact that I'll be picking up Cad Bane as soon as he's available, and his little band of mercenary cutthroats. So that's it. That is Star Wars. I wanted to stop, not do it, and I didn't do it till right now. But anyway, that is Star Wars Shatterpoint, or at least the parts of it that make it special, I think. And if you stuck with us all the way through here, that's awesome. If you'd be interested in hearing more and you want me to get Russ and Rafe to play a game and then do a full D6G patented battle report, pester them. All right. And so thank you once again for joining me here, and have a good day.
And that was the D6G Hot Take.
Achievement unlocked! You've made it to the end of another D6 Generation episode, the podcast whose humor has universally been acclaimed as not too horrible. Please let us know what you thought of the show by emailing us at info@the d6generation.com. If for some inexplicable reason you actually enjoyed this show, you can help others find out about it by leaving positive reviews on iTunes. Thanks for listening, and happy gaming.